What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at Tonalaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of Tonalaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Hey, welcome back to the Lead Counsel Podcast. Your host, Tom Tona. Before we jump into today's topic, I just want to take a minute to thank the sponsors of the podcast. This episode is sponsored by Tonalaw. They're not just another law firm. They're defining what it means to fight for their clients. We get a lot of attorney referrals from across the country. We pay fee participation in all jurisdictions where it's permitted. We focus on integrity, innovation, and relentless advocacy. Tonalaw is proving that the business of law can scale without losing its heart. If you want to see how a modern firm is built for impact and happy client referrals, check out tonalaw.com. Mention again the Lead Counsel Podcast, and I'm happy to get on the phone with you. This episode is also brought to you by Meet Gabby, the voice AI built for law firms. Gabby answers your phones 24/7, qualifies leads, and books consultations so you never miss another client. Imagine cutting intake time in half or giving every caller a 5-star experience. That's the power of Meet Gabby. Learn more at meetgabby.com. Mention the Lead Counsel Podcast. You can also hit me up, and I'm glad to make an introduction to the owner. This is episode 3. I am here with Jonathan Hawkins, Daniel Feiman, Ed Alexander, the gurus of all gurus when it comes to succession planning. Ed and John are lawyers. You guys, if you listen to the first 2 episodes, you already know that. And Dan is a succession planning and exit planning expert, lectures all over the world to big corporations. I was lucky enough to get turned on to Dan through a friend of mine who really lucratively and successfully exited her law practice. So it's doable. For all the naysayers out there, it's doable. We'll get into examples that Ed, Daniel, and Jonathan have all seen successful deals done. But let's talk today, the episode, let's frame it around what a modern succession plan looks like. Question 1 for you guys is, what does a strong succession plan look like to you today?
I'll start, and then I'm going to flip it to the other guys pretty quickly. But, I think there are different components to that. There's a legal side, there's legal documents you have to do. There's an ownership component of it, and then there's a leadership component of it. And I'm sure Daniel has lots of sub phases that he takes his clients through. But, from my perspective, that's how I sort of look at it. And personally, again, I'm not a operational type consultant in this area, so I would have to punt over to somebody like Daniel.
Dan?
All right. Well, from my perspective, and the roadmap that we have created and we use with clients, of course, goes through the 5 phases. You've got the preparation phase, where you're actually figuring out what is the purpose of this succession plan, what is the end result, the time frame, et cetera. Then the identification phase. And with each of these phases, we have specific templates that walk the client through this. And then the analysis phase, the critiquing phase, and the implementation phase. It's a roadmap that makes succession planning easier. But going back to clarifying a point, in case we've got people listening who are thinking of succession in a variety of ways, go back to the STEP model, STEP. Succession, transition, and exit planning. Succession is the succession of the firm, not just the founding partner. So you want to be very clear. Are we creating a succession plan for me, the founding partner? I want out, or I want to transition to a different role. Or is it the succession of the firm, as with some firms they're looking to expand, grow, merge, acquire? The transition piece in the STEP model is the transition from active managing partner to perhaps business managing partner to emeritus, if you will. I'm selling my piece of the practice. That transition is very different from succession. And then if you're ready for an actual exit plan, that's a third different step from succession and transition. So in today's world, it's very important to be clear on what terms we're using and what are the steps within each of those that are going to service your particular firm. And there are specific roadmaps for each of those three elements.
It sounds like there's almost three plans, this is why lawyers as clients get overwhelmed, because like my brain can't wrap my head around this. Like, are you telling me I got to have a succession plan, a transition plan, and an exit plan? Like, these sound like three distinct plans.
Tom, you ever watch a football game?
I mean, I watch football, but I usually watch fights.
Okay. Well, in football, you've got the offense, you've got the defense, you've got special teams. So each of those are separate elements of the team. Well, succession, transition, and exit planning are three phases, if you will, three components of your succession plan to accomplish what you want. It's just three stopping points within one continuum.
Okay.
It's not as complicated as it sounds.
The look of confusion on my face says otherwise.
My approach is, I think, a little bit different. I'm looking at how do we bring in an equity holder or identify somebody who is going to take over the firm. If the owner dies or, something happens that is in the near term, so kind of an emergency plan. Then we have the long-term plan. What does it look like? Are we going to transition out at a date certain? Is it going to be a gradual transition? And sometimes, if it's an external sale, it's going to be probably a date certain. And we're looking for somebody, if the owner wants to continue to act as of counsel or continue to practice or do those. So we're adding in all of the components, all of the elements that the owner's goals need in order to be met, right? So traditionally, if I took you through kind of the overall step, we'd take a look at what's the value of the firm? Where are we looking at the value of the firm? What are the owner's goals? What does the owner need from the firm? Is that going to satisfy what the owner needs? If not, then the owner has to go into a growth mode, right? And expand the firm. If it is, or if the owner is basically looking at this saying, I'm done and I want out within 5 years or 7 years or whatever the number is, then we need to bring in somebody who's going to take over that role as the successor in chief. And we need to get them on board into ownership. We need to implement the plan by which they come in and buy the balance of the firm, either upon the owner's death or at a specific point in time. And we do these over multiple steps. It could be a 2-step plan, a 3-step plan, that type of thing. So a little more in the step-by-step process to get it done rather than that top-level view that Daniel just talked about.
Okay.
I want to throw something into this mix. So something that we're seeing, and Tom, I know you've talked to some folks on this, but, with Arizona opening up to non-lawyer ownership, you're seeing straight up private equity, whatever, buying firms. But you're also seeing, and we're seeing sort of across the country for law, these new models where you're breaking it apart. You've got the law firm piece, and then you've got sort of the operations marketing piece, and then maybe something else over here to sort of segregate the lawyers and allow non-lawyers to start to sort of invest into the law firms, so to speak, without running afoul of the rules. So you're starting to see a lot of that pushed around, explored. So you've got that piece too. So from a planning perspective, and right now, pretty much all they want are the personal injury firms. There may be some structuring strategies that you may want to implement for long-term to increase your exit opportunities. I'll say that.
Okay.
It's a great point, Jonathan. On those MSOs, you got to have that right firm, right? So you mentioned the personal injury firms. They're also really looking for those process firms. So where the name of the lawyer or the reputation of the lawyer is not as important, so that they can put lawyers into those spots without worrying about that lawyer causing problems or having to get that lawyer out marketing, those types of things.
Right. They're looking for machines, right? Like marketing machines.
To accentuate Ed's point, the high ticket PI trial litigation is different than maybe a no-fault collection processing type practice that you could grow to something that somebody could just plug into.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, you hear about this.
Planting some seeds.
I hear you, man. You hear about all of this stuff, and that's where some of the naysayers are like, that never happens. And then meanwhile, is private equity looking for a specific revenue number? Is that 10 million? Is it 5 million? Here's the other issue, by the way. From what I understand about private equity, was it you, Dan, that told me the scary stories about they come in, but they structure it with what'd you call it, a kicker?
Second bite of the apple.
the second bite of the apple that never takes place? Like, are there any deals that are actually really decent for lawyers that are going on? Like, just a pointed question. Like, I mean, Dan and I know of that one deal that Dan was a part of, but are there other deals that somebody did a plan? You know, it was according to the plans you guys just laid out, some version of one of those 3 plans, and it was a good deal. Like, it was a good deal for a lawyer, like the lawyer cashed out or whatever it is.
I've seen some. Now, I don't believe that there was some pre-planned, hey, we're going to go to this place. The opportunity arose and they were set up to do it and they did it. And it's not always to private equity. It might be to another firm, you know, but I've seen it.
A bigger firm or something like that?
Yeah, for real.
Okay.
Big checks.
Yeah, and you asked before about size, right? And so what I'm seeing is that they'll acquire one large firm and then they'll do add-on acquisitions because clients have been approached that are smaller firms as an add-on.
Okay. So talk revenue levels. The larger firms, you're talking what? 20 mil, 50 mil, 100 mil?
In this case, it was about a $10 million firm, maybe 12.
That's considered large. Okay.
And then the add-on was about $1.5 million, small firm.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. And that's the type of stuff they don't talk about, right? Like, we don't, even in the rooms we're in, somebody define big, small, middle for law firms, not the businesses Dan's used to going into where $100 million is like the entry point. Like, you know, for law firms, you're saying 10 mil, that's a strong, healthy revenue level, which that is achievable for a personal injury firm, right? And for other firms, I mean, I know family law is coming on right behind PI. A lot of lawyers that are running it like a business that are north of 8 figures. So that's super, super interesting. Have you guys seen an evolution over the past decade of succession planning and actual plans themselves that have led to these kind of buyouts from private equity? Or like, has anybody done a private equity law firm deal?
I have not yet.
Okay.
I've seen early stages of them. I've not taken it all the way, but.
Okay. It's going to be interesting because we're like the last vestige behind veterinarians and dentists and doctors. So they're coming. It's just going to be a matter of how do they find those deals? Because I can't find an acquisition deal for anything. Like, I'm on Law Practice Exchange. How do they spot and find, how do you find acquisitions?
Like, if you want to buy an acquisition?
I want to buy or I want to sell. Like, there's the Law Practice Exchange, right? That's one website that is kind of novel and new. There is another one that's out there a lot, Quid Pro Quo. I know, Ed, you do your own brokerage too, right?
Right. We use Biz Buy Sell, but a lot of time when we're representing somebody who's looking to acquire, we've identified a firm type and we're direct to that firm. I'm not waiting for that firm to be listed. We're specifically going to a firm and saying, hey, we have somebody who's interested, have you considered selling, and kind of starting that conversation where often they've not even known that they could sell.
So is it just that New York sucks because every lawyer wants $1 bajillion for something that's not worth $1 bajillion, where you can't find?
Tom, that's not unique to New York. That's every seller across the country.
Dan, in all candor, I'm going to disclose, I had Ed do a mail campaign for me throughout New York. And he was like, I've never seen anything like this before. Like, it's just, New York is different. So, like, Ed, speak candidly, like, you did a mail campaign for me. Remember, we talked about it.
That was a while ago. Yeah, I mean, but look, at the end of the day, every single seller thinks that they have gold, right? And it's really the fear of leaving money on the table that is exactly that, right? So
it's crazy.
They go into it not knowing, and you really have to educate them through the process. But there's a mindset piece there, right? So you got to know that the seller or somebody who's a prospective seller is coachable and that they're willing to look at the numbers and understand how this works. Unfortunately, a lot of them aren't, but some of them are, and it takes work to find those acquisition candidates.
I've been looking for years now. And so I'll tell you what I have found in my travels a lot, even from starting with you when we sent out that letter campaign. Guys doing a healthy number. It might be 1.5, 2 mil. He's asking, let's say 4 mil. And I'm like, what's your margin? Now I'm starting to have these conversations, which again, that's making me a little nuts. I'm hoping to bring somebody on who's a growth by acquisition, who's got some scaling by acquisition experience, right? And I'm hoping to bring that in internal and a hire. And I said, I started with the, after we do the niceties, what's the margin? The guy's like, 76%. I'm like, all right, he has no other lawyers working for him. He's got no support staff working for him. I do the calculations on the number of files and I'm like, all right. He's at a healthy 20% 25% margin. Once I factor in, I have to build out 2 pods to run all the files. How do you value that? How do you value that law firm? Or is it just something that you're going to walk away from because you go, it's not a $4 million law firm. It's a $1 million acquisition or a $1.5 million acquisition. Like, how do you guys work with valuation experts? Do you get your own valuation expert? And at what point do you even know the person's serious if already the back of the napkin math, something's telling you it's way off? Like, how do you do it nuts and bolts operationally, guys?
I'll tell you that my back of the napkin approach is when somebody comes up with a crazy, insane number, I'm always asking, tell me how you got there. Because I want to see their numbers. What are they thinking? And when I hear things like rule of thumb or my brother-in-law Larry and those types of things, then I know we're dealing with somebody who doesn't have the numbers. So then we start working the numbers.
Right. Oh, so you would still try to do a deal. I get to the point where I'm like, look, time is very limited. Like, if I'm dealing with somebody who's asking for a 2 multiple on gross revenue without factoring in the operational piece of another $1 million that's got to be spent, I already get the feeling like there's no conversations that are going to get me there. Right? Like, Dan, you're smiling like you want to say something. And John, so jump in, guys. Like, how do you get over these hurdles?
Jonathan, go ahead.
So from an acquisition, if you're the one that's looking for an acquisition, there's a few things that I would just say, there's a lot of different types of acquisition. So, you could get the retiring lawyer type thing where you get client list and et cetera. You could probably get that on the cheap, but there's limited value to that. You might be able to start to get your acquisition processes down by those kind because they're lower risk. But then there's probably a sweet spot in my view of what would make sense to get to acquire something that's pretty good operationally that you could expand on and that you could earn you could sort of pay for the acquisition within a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years. There's a whole lot of crap out there. I mean, just be honest.
Okay. So I'm not crazy. There is a lot of crap out there.
There's a lot of crap out there.
Absolutely there is. But I'll pick up what both Ed and Jonathan were talking about. I would start with that old edict about you hire for culture and you train for skill. Figure out if you're going to scale. Tom, you're looking to buy firms. You're in 2 specific practice areas. Are you looking to expand, buy firms in those areas, or are you looking for a third silo? That's part of your strategy. And how quickly do you want to scale up? And does the firm that you're looking at, once you pare the numbers down to the real value, and there is no such thing as real value, by the way, does it fit your strategy, your succession plan? That's a very important question first. Then, if it ticks the boxes, then how do you derive the value of that addition to your firm compared to the rationale that they are using? The number may be somewhere in between. Figure a seller, as we all know, as Ed said, they figure their gold. So their value only goes up in negotiations. You're going to start whatever number you think is right, and you're going to negotiate down. And when you pass each other, there's no deal. If you happen to have an equilibrium where they're willing to acknowledge your evaluation of their organization, their files, their niche, and you theirs, then there's a potential deal. But you've got both the tangible side that you can measure and the intangible. How much of the staff, how much of the reputation, how much of the legacy is coming along and at what value? The intangibles are so much more difficult to value than are the tangibles.
Quick break to thank Meet Gabby, the voice AI that answers your phone, screen leads, and books consults 24/7. They'll even send out retainers if the person on the other end of the phone asks for a retainer. If intake is slowing you down, check out meetgabby.com. This episode is supported by Tonalaw, a modern law firm built on integrity and innovation. Learn how they're changing the game at tonalaw.com. Attorney referrals accepted from across the country. You'll see what it's like when you send us a case. You'll have some happy clients. So, okay, 75-year-old lawyer, community reputation, 1 paralegal, 95 files. Is there a sale to be had versus, like in the PI world where I see the retiring partner thing. I've done 2 of those deals, right? But they were closing up. I happened to be having breakfast with 2 different guys and they were heading to Florida. I said, don't just close up. I literally just gave you fee participation of like $85,000. Keep sending files and I'll just keep paying fee participation. That's what you were talking about, Jonathan, where the guy was already folding up. He was done. He made so much money. And that happened twice. And so his phones got forwarded to my phones and any cases that would come in would get attributed to him. Then there's this other thing where there's an active inventory. What I've seen traditionally is where they go, look, I'll just give you a sweet referral deal. You stay on of counsel. I don't care where you are in Florida. You just keep referring over deals. But is there a plus for goodwill in that scenario for somebody who's got community ties and all of that? Is that a reasonable expectation? And then how do you value that? Like I'm asking like real granular now, because that's where I'm like, how do you even structure something like that?
So, Tom, you're talking the difference between an asset sale and a going concern business. So the going concern business is the one that you're talking about where you got a team, it's producing files regularly, right? So there's something going on there and you're going to benefit into the future. The asset sale is where you're buying files and there's going to be no more files and you're just closing them out.
Well, that's kind of the question. Do you ask that question? Do you ask the question of, hey, are you going to still be actively marketing, or because you're a bajillionaire, are you looking to wind down?
Yeah, Tom, it's not that whether because they're going off into the sunset. It's whether it can be added to your operation and make you money by virtue of what it does, right? So, I mean, think about, let's say that they had a series of YouTube videos that just constantly produce cases. Well, that's value. So those are going to sit out there for a while and you buy that and they would receive a benefit out of that value because it would produce cash flow into the future. And so effectively, what you're buying is that you're paying a discounted amount for that cash flow and you're taking on the risk of that cash flow going away into the future. With your retiring guys, all you're doing is whatever it takes you to hook up your phone to theirs and saying, hey, thanks for your phone number. There's some value there, but I don't know what it is. And if I get paid, you'll get paid.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the scenario I'm thinking of where I go, okay, so you talked about that evergreen marketing piece, right? Is it a machine? Is it not? What if you're dealing with the person that's just the mayor of, a county? When I say mayor, he's kind of the schmoozy, knows everybody. Everybody sends him the cases. That is not evergreen if the guy's winding it down, going off on his sailboat, right? So then it's just basically you're getting the inventory piece.
Well, and anything he sends to you, basically
right.
What you're leveraging is his personal goodwill versus the firm's enterprise goodwill.
So is there a value to that standalone in your mind for anybody that wants to chime in? Or are you just working on a written agreement to honor the percentages ad infinitum until they stop the referrals?
In other words, is there proprietary value that will continue or not? The YouTube videos have some proprietary value. If they have created something that is unique that you can take over without suffering because you're losing their personal identity, to use your term, Tom, they're mayor of Happy Town. Well, that's goodwill as we use the term, but can that goodwill be leveraged into the future into dollars that you can then use a discounted cash flow model to say it's worth X? Or if when the mayor of Happy Town goes to Florida, nobody can find him, there is no more golden goose to be used. That's what you have to find out.
So in that instance, you can do a percentage. You could also say, hey, for the next 2 years, you're going to transition all your relationships to me. I'm going to put you on an of counsel relationship, something like that. Like, what have you guys seen done in that area? Where, look, people at some point, whether maybe they're laying in a hospital bed, maybe they're something else, but they got to have the realization that the Grim Reaper's at the door, right? Like, people can't do this forever. So in that instance, is it just negotiating and being fair and reasonable and saying, look, I want you to continue marketing the relationships, right? Building the relationships versus happy, mayor of Happy Town. You know what I mean?
Oh, in that case, I mean, what you just said is the of counsel piece is critical, right? Because effectively you want them in your firm so that they're referring into their own firm and you can pay them the fee out of that.
Right.
There is another scenario too, Tom, that you hadn't really touched on, but it's sort of in the same area. There are attorneys out there that have their own firm that, for whatever reason, they're just sick and tired of having to deal with all the headaches of running the firm. Dealing with all the employees, headaches all the time. They get all the risk. They just want to practice law. And there are those owners out there that you could provide a solution for. Hey, I will take care of all that. I've got the infrastructure. I want you to go get the cases, work the cases, whatever. Whatever employees you have, if they pass my cultural benchmarks, they can come on our team, and I relieve that burden from you. I've seen a lot of that too. And they can come on in a variety of different roles, W-2, of counsel, whatever it is. But that's another category of folks that I've seen as part of the quote acquisition universe.
And let me ask very specifically for the lawyers. You talk about of counsel, you talk about W-2, New York. And John, I know you have a New York attorney in your office, I believe. Historically, like I check with attorneys, right? I call my employment guy or whatever. I used to use contracts. And then my employment guy was like, yeah, look, it's not Florida, man. Don't use contracts. So I'm like, okay. All right.
With that.
So, with your New York guy, right? Do you recommend for attorneys having contracts in place?
For my personal injury, law firm owner clients, absolutely. Because there's a lot of things you can address in those contracts and that you should. I mean, that'd be a whole episode, but notice to the firm. How do you do notice to the clients? Trade secret-y, confidential kind of stuff. Fee splits, if they take cases, all sorts of things, dispute resolution. I mean, go down the list that if you don't put that in an agreement, you don't have it. And there are lots of things. And I've seen plenty of agreements where, the PI owner thinks, hey, I'll get creative and say, all the clients are mine. If you leave and take them, you got to pay me 100% of the fees. That's not going to be enforceable anywhere. Right. But there are ways to structure these that protect the owner's downside for sure. And I say you're putting up hurdles or gates that people have to walk through. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of gates to go through. And it gives you, the owner, downside protection. Absolutely 100%. I think you should have them.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Okay. So interestingly enough, all right, I'll be circling back on that point too. This podcast costs me money.
And I would say, I'd like to hear Ed and Daniel's. I would think if you have those kind of agreements in place with your attorneys, probably the valuation is going to be a little higher because the risk is a little bit lower potentially if those contracts are drafted well.
Right. All right. So look, I think we land this plane. Any last pointers, guys? Ed, you look like you're about to say something.
Well, just to circle it back to succession planning, right? All this conversation, we were talking about acquisition, but at the end of the day, that's the opposite side of what you're going to be on when you're doing succession planning, right? So thinking about, do you have that proprietary technology, the proprietary intellectual property? Is it just you? Or have you created a business with a team that can do the work without you? That's the key right there, if you've created value for yourself in your succession plan.
And does this also, because I've come to understand the life cycle of a business where you have infancy, you have childhood, you have teenagehood, you have maturity and adulthood. Does this require a certain level of maturity of the business before you get to that point where you start to think this way? I understand what we talked about in prior episodes where you like build it at the beginning, start at the beginning. But Dan, you're laughing, so you go first.
All right, well, I'll go back to John Warlow's Built to Sell, which came out, I think I reviewed it for the New York Journal 10, 12 years ago. The whole concept is you want to optimize the value of your firm. You're the founder, you're the managing partner. You need to make yourself 100% dispensable, not indispensable. Dispensable. When the firm can run without you, when you can go to Portugal for 2-3 weeks with your family and eat all the sweets you say you never eat, except every day, I think I heard you say you were eating them. That's when the firm... Two a day.
Okay.
So that's when the firm has the most value because then you're managing the firm. The firm isn't you. That's how you optimize. So you go back to the day you start a firm is when you should start to plan your exit. Almost no one does that, let's be honest. But in the perfect world, we all know we have an expiration date personally and from a firm standpoint. So you start to plan your succession to where you want to be when you're in complete control. That gives you the most opportunity to look at all your options, build it the way you want to, put in the right people so that you can step aside proud of what you've created, optimize the dollars in your pocket, and then you've got unlimited options. That's succession planning.
All right. I think we wrap it up there, guys. That was a strong way to finish. And thank you all. I think the next episode is how do you actually go about building one of these things, right? Like, how do you go about building this plan? And for the guys like me that are out there and the ladies out there like me. So we'll leave it there. Tune in next time. We're going to keep going. Same thing. We'll probably roll out another 3 or 4 episodes and do that last episode of just Q&A. So if you're listening to these, send in your questions through social media to any of us. We're all over LinkedIn. You know, Daniel's on there, Ed's on there, John's on there, I'm on there. And I've already got about a dozen questions, but you know, keep them coming because these are the people that will answer those questions. And we need to demystify this stuff. Lawyers suck at this as in general. And it's about time to stop hearing the horror stories. I'll end it on this note. I interviewed a guy one time who gave me a reference, somebody he used to work with. I called that guy up and the guy just sounded, he was a lawyer. And I said, you know, what's going on, man? He's like, oh, I've been on disability forever. I died at my desk 3 times. My secretary found me slumped over the files. They resuscitated me in the office and I've been on disability ever since. I mean, I'm not joking. If I'm you, John, or I'm you, Ed, I'm going to have a big blow up photo of the Grim Reaper because the lawyers that come to you guys are ridiculous. Me included. I'm ridiculous that I'm having these conversations and yet I'm making a mental checklist. All right, I got to get with Jonathan. I need contracts from my lawyer. I got to get with Dan. I got to sit down and be disciplined. So like, come on, man. We're lawyers. We plan for everybody else. You're going to leave this shit on your spouse. You're going to leave this shit on your partners. And like, it's got to stop. It's just got to stop. So guys, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Lead Counsel Podcast. Your host, Tom Tona. Go anywhere podcasts are distributed. Follow us. Leave us a 10-star review. Share some episodes with your friends. And thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you. This episode is sponsored by Tonalaw. They're not just another law firm. They're defining what it means to fight for their clients. We get a lot of attorney referrals from across the country. We pay fee participation in all jurisdictions where it's permitted. We focus on integrity, innovation, and relentless advocacy. Tonalaw is proving that the business of law can scale without losing its heart. If you want to see how a modern firm is built for impact and happy client referrals, check out tonalaw.com. Mention again the Lead Counsel Podcast, and I'm happy to get on the phone with you. This episode is also brought to you by Meet Gabby, the voice AI built for law firms. Gabby answers your phones 24/7, qualifies leads, and books consultations so you never miss another client. Imagine cutting intake time in half or giving every caller a 5-star experience. That's the power of Meet Gabby. Learn more at meetgabby.com. Mention the Lead Counsel Podcast. You can also hit me up, and I'm glad to make an introduction to the owner.